Mohenjo Daro is eerily quiet. The sun bakes its crumbling brick walls, casting long shadows over the remnants of a city that once pulsed with life. Yet something here is deeply unsettling. Scattered across its ancient streets, lying exposed as if caught in the middle of their daily lives, are human skeletons. Some are sprawled out, arms reaching forward as though they fell mid-step. Others seem frozen in defensive postures. No signs of battle, no weapons, no shields or fortifications shattered by invaders, just remains preserved by time, whispering a story that has perplexed historians for nearly a century. When the first archaeologists began excavating Mohenjo Daro in the 1920s, they were unprepared for what they found. Dozens of skeletons unearthed from the ruins appeared to tell a haunting tale. Many lay in what seemed to be unnatural positions, collapsed in the streets as though death had struck suddenly. It was an eerie sight, and the early researchers, already working under the assumption that ancient civilizations often met violent ends, saw what they expected to see: a massacre. They speculated that the people of Mohenjo Daro had been slaughtered in an invasion, a theory that aligned neatly with the dominant historical narrative of the time. The prevailing belief, heavily influenced by colonial-era scholarship, was that Indo-Aryan tribes had swept through the Indian subcontinent, destroying the older, sophisticated civilizations in their path. The skeletons, they claimed, were proof of this violent conquest. But even as this theory gained traction, something didn't add up. If this had been a citywide slaughter, where were the weapons? Where were the broken blades, the arrowheads embedded in bone, the mass graves typical of battlefield deaths? And how could an invading force have conquered a city this advanced, yet leave no trace of its own presence? The deeper researchers dug, both into the ruins and the evidence. The less plausible the massacre theory became. As forensic analysis techniques improved, the skeletons of Mohenjo Daro were re-examined. Studies revealed that they were not all from the same time period. Some were buried deep within the city's layers, while others were closer to the surface, indicating that they had been deposited there at different times over a span of centuries. This meant that there was no singular event, no sudden catastrophe that wiped out the population. More curiously, the bodies lacked clear signs of trauma. No shattered skulls, no defensive wounds, nothing that suggested a violent death. The positioning of the skeletons, once thought to be evidence of people collapsing where they stood, was also called into question. Natural forces, erosion, floods, shifting soil, could have easily moved bodies over time, creating the illusion of sudden death in the street. Some remains may have originally been properly buried, only to be later exposed by environmental changes. Others may have been left behind in abandoned areas, gradually displaced by water and earth over the centuries. The massacre never happened. It was a myth, a compelling but ultimately baseless story shaped by the biases of early archaeologists. Dr. Jonathan Mark Kanoya, a leading expert on the Indus Valley Civilization, has stated repeatedly that there is no evidence of large-scale violent conflict at Mohenjo Daro. No signs of war, no invasion, no sudden mass death. But if war didn't end Mohenjo Daro, what did? If its people weren't wiped out in a blaze of conquest, why did this city fall into ruin? One mystery had been resolved, but another had just begun. Something else had happened here. Something that left behind only silent streets, abandoned homes, and unanswered questions. And whatever it wasn't war. Of all the theories surrounding Mohenjo Daro, none is more sensational or more controversial than this. Some believe this ancient city was destroyed not by war, not by flood, but by something far more devastating. Something that shouldn't have existed 4,000 years ago. A nuclear explosion. Oh no, it sounds absurd. Impossible, and yet for decades the idea has refused to die. It started with the skeleton. Some researchers claimed they exhibited unusually high levels of radiation. Others pointed to strange burn marks, as if bodies had been exposed to intense heat. Then there were the ruins themselves. Some claimed that certain structures showed signs of vitrification, a process where extreme heat melts and fuses sand and stone into glass. In modern history, this has only ever been observed in two places: at atomic bomb test sites and in areas hit by meteorite impacts. But perhaps the most unsettling detail comes from ancient texts. The Mahabharata, one of the great epics of Indian literature, contains a passage describing a devastating weapon. A single projectile charged with all the power of the universe, a blinding light hotter than 1,000 suns, a great wind that reduced cities to ash, leaving behind only silence. It is a haunting description, one that to some sounds eerily like the detonation of an atomic bomb. The pieces seem to fit, and so a new theory was born. Could it be that Mohenjo Daro was destroyed by some lost technology? An ancient catastrophe that echoed the horrors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki thousands of years before humanity even understood the concept of nuclear fission? For decades, this theory has been pushed in books, documentaries, and online forums. It is thrilling. It is mysterious. It is also completely false. The claim that Mohenjo Daro's ruins contain abnormally high levels of radiation originated in Soviet-era fringe literature, particularly in the works of Alexander Gorbovsky, a writer known for promoting alternative history theories. However, no actual scientific study has ever confirmed these radiation levels. When modern geologists examined the site, they found nothing unusual. No unnatural radioactivity, no radiation burns, nothing out of the ordinary. Background radiation levels at Mohenjo Daro are no higher than those found in any other ancient archaeological site. As for vitrification, another myth. No credible archaeological report has ever confirmed melted structures in Mohenjo Daro. The buildings were constructed using sun-dried mud bricks, which crumble under natural erosion over time but do not exhibit any signs of heat exposure beyond standard ancient firing techniques. Even when analyzed under microscopic examination, no traces of vitrified stone have been found at the site. And the Mahabharata? It is an epic poem, a mythological text. Its descriptions of divine weapons are metaphors, not historical records. There is no archaeological evidence linking the events of the Mahabharata to any real-world catastrophe. The epic was written centuries after Mohenjo Daro's decline, making it impossible for it to describe an event that supposedly occurred at the site. Yet, despite all this, the nuclear war theory refuses to die. Perhaps it's because we are drawn to the idea that history is more mysterious than we understand, that civilizations before us possessed knowledge that was lost, that the past hides secrets far stranger than we can imagine. But when it comes to Mohenjo Daro, we don't need wild theories to see its brilliance. What was built here was extraordinary. An advanced city meticulously planned with innovations that rival anything from the ancient world. Its achievements are remarkable enough without needing myths of atomic destruction. And yet this leaves us with a deeper question. If Mohenjo Daro was not erased by war, and if it was not vaporized in an ancient nuclear apocalypse, then what happened? How does a civilization capable of building a city like this simply disappear? The answer, it seems, may lie not in myths of war or fire, but in something far more relentless. Something as old as civilization itself. Water. Civilizations rise with water and they fall with it. This has been true since the dawn of human settlement, and for Mohenjo Daro, water may have been both its greatest gift and its ultimate undoing. The city was built along the banks of the Indus River, its lifeline to the outside world, providing not only fresh water, but also trade routes, fertile land, and a means of sustaining an advanced urban population. But rivers are unpredictable. What they give, they can also take away. For years, archaeologists suspected that Mohenjo Daro's downfall might be linked to catastrophic flooding. When excavations revealed thick layers of silt buried within the ruins, a compelling theory emerged. The city had been struck by repeated floods, each one leaving devastation in its wake. The Indus River, which had once sustained the city, may have become its greatest threat. At first, the evidence seemed undeniable. Geological studies confirmed that the Indus River has shifted its course multiple times throughout history, and such movements can be catastrophic for settlements dependent on stable water access. Sudden monsoon surges, tectonic shifts, or glacial melts could have triggered floodwaters powerful enough to sweep through the city, drowning streets, filling homes with silt, and making life unsustainable. And then there's the city's architecture itself. Mohenjo Daro was built on massive raised platforms, elevated several meters above the surrounding plain. Some archaeologists believe this was a conscious effort to protect against flooding. But was it enough? Did the Indus people see the warning signs, understand the danger, and attempt to engineer a defense? And if they did, why did it fail? For a time, this theory seemed like the most logical explanation for the city's decline. But the deeper researchers looked, the more contradictions they found. If catastrophic floods had wiped out Mohenjo Daro, where was the evidence of widespread water damage? The buildings still stand, their walls largely intact. There are no signs of sudden collapse, no homes preserved beneath layers of flood debris like those found in other ancient cities devastated by water. And most strikingly, there is no mass exodus preserved in the ruins. No indication that the city's population abandoned it all at once, as would be expected in the face of environmental catastrophe. This raised another question. If flooding was a problem, why didn't the city's sophisticated drainage system prevent it? Mohenjo Daro had one of the most advanced urban drainage systems of the ancient world, with covered sewers, street gutters, and water chutes leading waste away from homes. If floods had occurred frequently, why didn't these innovations protect the city's infrastructure? Could it be that the flooding theory was only part of the truth? In recent years, climate scientists have turned their attention to an even more alarming possibility. According to research led by geologist Liviu Giosun of Harvard University, the Indus Valley Civilization may have suffered not from flooding but from the slow, creeping effects of climate change. His studies suggest that monsoon patterns in the region shifted dramatically around the time of Mohenjo Daro's decline. As monsoons weakened, the Indus River's flow may have diminished, leading to the gradual drying of farmland and a slow but inevitable collapse of the city's agricultural foundation. It's a chilling thought. Not a sudden disaster, not a single moment of catastrophe, but a long, drawn-out struggle against forces too vast to control. The people of Mohenjo Daro wouldn't have seen their civilization vanish overnight. Instead, they would have watched as harvests shrank, as trade routes failed, as wells dried up. Until, one by one, families packed up their belongings and left, searching for a better life elsewhere. Water built this city, and water in the end may have been what took it away. But if flooding and climate change were responsible for Mohenjo Daro's decline, why did its people leave behind so much? Why does the city still stand, eerily frozen in time, as if abandoned in an instant? The answer, perhaps, lies in something even more mysterious. Something that should tell us exactly what happened, but instead only deepens the enigma. A voice from the past, one we have yet to understand. We know so much about Mohenjo Daro. We know how its people lived. We know how they built, how they farmed, how they traded. But what we don't know, what remains frustratingly out of reach, is what they said. Across the ruins, carved into seals, pottery, and tablets, is a language that no one can read. The Indus script, one of the last great undeciphered writing systems of the ancient world, has defied every attempt to unlock its secrets. We can recognize its symbols. We can count them, analyze their patterns, and compare them to known languages. But we cannot understand them. And this isn't just an academic puzzle, this is a gaping hole in history. Because if we could read the Indus script, we might finally have answers. We might know what these people called themselves, what gods they worshipped, what laws they followed. We might even find a record, written by the people of Mohenjo Daro themselves, explaining what truly happened to their city. But for over a century, every effort to crack the code has failed. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs or Mesopotamian cuneiform, the Indus script has no Rosetta Stone, no bilingual text to compare it to. Its inscriptions are often frustratingly short, averaging just a handful of symbols, making it difficult to determine whether they represent a full language or something more symbolic, like an early form of shorthand. What we do know is that these symbols are not random. The script appears on seals used for trade, on tablets that may have been legal or religious records, and on objects that suggest official use. Statistical analyses show patterns consistent with a structured language, suggesting it wasn't just pictograms but a true system of writing. In recent years, artificial intelligence and computational linguistics have been employed to analyze the script with promising results. Some experts believe we are on the brink of a breakthrough, that machine learning may soon be able to identify patterns the human eye has missed. In 2023, Tamil Nadu's chief minister announced a $1 million prize for anyone who can successfully decipher the Indus script. The challenge has reignited global interest in cracking the code, drawing linguists, historians, and AI researchers into the hunt for answers. And here is where the mystery takes an even more tantalizing turn. Some scholars argue that traces of the Indus script may still exist today, not on ancient seals, but in the languages spoken across South Asia. There are theories linking it to early Dravidian languages, suggesting that while the civilization itself may have disappeared, its linguistic roots could have survived, evolving over millennia into the languages spoken by millions today. If true, it would mean that Mohenjo Daro's voice never truly fell silent, that in some way its people still speak through us, their words unknowingly passed down through generations. But until we crack the code, Mohenjo Daro's greatest secrets remain locked away, buried not beneath stone but within language itself. And this raises an even bigger question. If we still don't understand their words, what else are we missing? What other parts of this civilization, its beliefs, its laws, its knowledge, have been lost to time? And if we could finally decipher the script, would it change everything we think we know about the people of Mohenjo Daro? It's one of the last unsolved riddles of the ancient world, and the answer could be closer than we think. Mohenjo Daro has stood in silence for thousands of years, a city frozen in time. But what if the ruins we see today are only part of the story? What if beneath the crumbling streets and faded bricks there lies an even older chapter? One that challenges everything we think we know about this ancient civilization. For decades, archaeologists believed they had uncovered the full extent of Mohenjo Daro. Its towering structures, its intricate drainage systems, its vast urban grid. Surely this was the entire city. But in recent years, evidence has emerged suggesting that what we've excavated is only the surface of something much deeper. Beneath the visible ruins, hidden from sight, are signs of earlier settlements, structures built before the city we recognize today. Ground-penetrating radar surveys have detected anomalies beneath the layers of history, suggesting that Mohenjo Daro was not a singular city, but a site of continuous habitation, built and rebuilt over centuries. If this is true, then we are only scratching the surface, both literally and figuratively, of its secrets. But even more astonishing is what has been found above the ruins. In 2023, archaeologists made a discovery that shattered the long-held belief that Mohenjo Daro was abandoned and forgotten after the fall of the Indus Valley Civilization. A collection of copper coins buried near the site's Buddhist stupa was uncovered during an excavation. These coins date back to the Kushan period, nearly 2,000 years after the supposed disappearance of Mohenjo Daro. For historians, this was a game-changer. It meant that long after the Indus civilization faded from history, long after its streets emptied and its buildings crumbled, people were still coming here. Not just passing through, but using the site, leaving behind traces of their presence. This discovery suggests that Mohenjo Daro may have remained a place of spiritual or cultural significance well into the classical era. And yet, for all we've uncovered, so much remains hidden. How much of Mohenjo Daro is still buried beneath the sands of time? How much of its history has yet to be written? There is a growing belief among scholars that a massive portion of the Indus Valley Civilization remains undiscovered. Not just in Mohenjo Daro, but in sites all across the subcontinent. In recent years, satellite imaging has revealed the faint outlines of settlements stretching across Pakistan and India, many of them still unexcavated. Some are believed to be larger than anything we have yet uncovered. Could it be that the greatest discoveries of the Indus Valley Civilization are yet to come? That beneath the soil, hidden in plain sight, lie answers to questions we've been asking for centuries? If the past is any indication, then the truth is clear. We are nowhere near understanding the full story of Mohenjo Daro. We are standing at the edge of something far greater than we imagined. And what we have always thought of as a lost city may in fact be just the beginning. How does a civilization disappear? How does a city that once held tens of thousands of people, one of the greatest metropolises of its time, simply fade away? This is the final and perhaps greatest mystery of Mohenjo Daro. For years, the dominant narrative was that the Indus Valley Civilization collapsed suddenly. That something, a flood, a war, a catastrophe, wiped it from the earth. But as we've uncovered more evidence, a different story has emerged. This wasn't a civilization that collapsed overnight. It was one that changed, that adapted, that may have never truly disappeared at all. The first clue lies in the fact that Mohenjo Daro was not alone. It was one of hundreds of settlements that formed the Indus Valley Civilization, stretching across vast regions of present-day India and Pakistan. And crucially, these settlements all show signs of decline around the same time. But why? What could cause such a widespread shift? Some of the answers may lie in genetics. Recent DNA studies suggest that the people of the Indus Valley may not have vanished. They may have migrated. Genetic links between ancient Indus Valley remains and modern South Asian populations indicate that their descendants did not disappear, but were absorbed into emerging cultures, blending into the societies that came after them. Linguistics tells a similar story. Some scholars believe that the Indus script may hold connections to early Dravidian languages, meaning that the civilization's influence may still be present in the languages spoken by millions today. If this is true, then Mohenjo Daro's legacy is not just in its ruins. It is in the very fabric of South Asian culture. But what about the Indo-Aryans? For years, historians debated whether their arrival marked the end of the Indus Valley Civilization. Early theories suggested an invasion, a conquest, but the lack of evidence for large-scale war tells a different story. But the more likely explanation is cultural transformation, not destruction. As climate change, shifting rivers and economic decline made Indus cities unsustainable, the people of Mohenjo Daro may have moved, integrating with emerging societies, adapting to new ways of life. In this way, Mohenjo Daro never truly fell. It evolved. The final irony of Mohenjo Daro's mystery is that it may not be a story of loss at all. It may be a story of endurance. This was a civilization that built some of the greatest cities the ancient world had ever seen. It pioneered urban planning, sanitation, and engineering in ways that would not be replicated for thousands of years. And its influence, though often overlooked, still lingers in the modern world. So perhaps we've been asking the wrong question all along. Perhaps it's not about how this city fell, but about how it still survives. Not in bricks or ruins, but in language, in culture, in the very DNA of the people who walk the land today. Mohenjo Daro was never truly lost. It has always been with us.